Thank you for. Testing. Testing. Hey, Josh, can you hear me? Barely. Sorry, yes, my stream crashed right. All right, give me a second here. I'm on a new mic and new things, so I'm trying to figure things out. How does that sound? Does that sound better? Still the same. Okay. I gotta figure out why OBS is doing this to me. No. Well, actually, this isn't OBS. This is actually regular. This is StreamYard. So why is that so low? Give me a second here. All right, let me. All right, do I sound better here, or still low? Okay. All right. Give me a second here. Hopefully, I can get this working here. I got to get the other screen up and running here real quick. By the way, I didn't know if I told you or not. I think you have a Discord. Yeah, because Bob and I found something that says Josh Howard in our one chat. So, oh yeah, I don't know, but all right. I gotta make sure all the audio is all turned down there. And, okay, it's off there. All right, guys. Am I still quiet on your end, the guys? Josh, I know I'm okay on your end. Bot. Gotta love those bots. Okay, I just need to make sure. Where did my StreamYards go there? Okay. Can you guys verify if you guys can hear Josh? You're good on my side. I just got to see if the guys can hear you here and make sure that. Okay, she said I can't even hear you with my Bluetooth. Okay, what the heck is going on? All right, give me a second here, Josh. Browser source. Yeah, this is one of those times, Bobs. I do agree. Okay, let me present. Okay. See. Yeah, the problem is what happened the other day was I got the new mic and stuff like that, so we're changing some things around, and unfortunately, didn't get all the kinks worked out. So, all right, let's. Why isn't that allowing me to? Should be able to. I'm not sure why it's not pulling in the audio source. Desktop audio. Here, let's. Sorry, Josh. I apologize. Loud. Okay, it's using the mic. Why isn't? Okay. Okay, do I need to add that to stage? No, that shouldn't need.
It's weird. Why is it not pulling the audio from the main computer? Okay, sorry about that, guys. Apologize about that.
there wasn't scuff. That's just my nature. That's just how it is. All right, I guess I'm gonna have to. Okay, can I do? I wonder if I can add you into like members. No, okay, that's not what I wanted. I'm trying to see if I can put you into restream and see if maybe we can pull it in that way. But I don't see how there's a way to do it. You can't hear me. Bob said he can't hear me. No, I hear you now. Do you hear? Do you hear Josh? It's quiet all over again. What is going on? I just cannot win. What we might have to do. What was settings? I wonder if I am going to have to. I want OBS. It's weird that OBS will not pick up. Do I need to? Let me do this. Hold on for a second. Let's do. Wonder if I put you in Firefox. Okay. Wonder how that sounds. Go ahead, try talking, Josh. See if they can hear you.
Check one, check one, two. Well, that was weird.
You hear yourself.
I did for a second, yeah.
Okay.
But not now.
Okay. I got to delay there for a second. Okay. Bob says here's a reverb. Okay. All right. Okay, Bob. Can you hear him? Okay. Doesn't look like that worked. Okay. What if I do? Let's do this. What if we did this? Okay. Try that. No, Josh is who I hear, but you're still quiet, but also with reverb. No, okay, that's what I was asking. We were asking if you heard Josh. Okay, so here's me with the reverb. Okay. All right. Let's see. Yeah, the quiet thing I cannot help, unfortunately, other than the reverb. Okay, so we can hear you other than the reverb. Okay, wonder if I can. Wonder. I know what it's doing. I know what it's doing. I'm gonna do. Okay. Can you guys hear me? Okay, Josh, you want to go ahead and say something, real quick?
All right, can everyone hear me?
Still quiet. Who's quiet? Josh or me? You need to distinguish. Yeah, there's a reverb definitely going on. Okay. What is going on? Josh, you're good. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, does that sound better, guys? Yeah, unfortunately, I can't help it on my end. My volume, for some reason, why is going to be low, but I gotta have to try to make it as much as I can. All right, give me a second here, Josh. I'm gonna try firing up the volume here on my mic and see if I can go any higher. Properties. Why does it keep resetting down to 100? That's part of the problem. 200. Okay, does that sound better? If not, we're gonna have to run with it. I can't keep taking time here. Okay, good. Sorry, Josh. I apologize. I appreciate your patience.
All good. No
Okay.
worries, man.
Alrighty. Well, I want to thank you guys for hanging on here and welcome you back here to another stream. Josh, I want to formally welcome you here. I know was about 6 months ago we talked. Maybe about a was it a little bit
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to getting a back feed here on my side. I'm gonna have to live with it, unfortunately. All right. So, I know the last time we talked, it was about your relaunch title. The crossover between the original Dead at 17 series and the new series that you just launched. And I know we kind of briefly talked about what your direction you were going in and stuff like that. So, for those who are new to your stuff, what is Dead at 17 about?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. Essentially, it's about a girl who is targeted and murdered by a cult once she begins to have um, visions. Let's say, and then they use her as they want her for some reason in their for their ritual, and she is sacrificed, but then mysteriously resurrects, and that's sort of the base of like whether you're reading the original series or this new version. That's sort of the core of it. But then this the difference was that the new version that I'm crowdfunding right now is that it's sort of it's a reboot of the previous series, but now you're picking up a story 20 years later, um, and following what's been going on and in the intervening years. And so it's a much older Nara and Hazy who are at different points in their life than you've seen them before. Oh no, did I lose you?
Nope, I'm still here.
Okay, cool.
Nope, just letting you talk. All right. Yeah, unfortunately, it's because I'm getting the reverb. I gotta wait for the audio to kind of catch up and stuff. So I apologize on my
Oh,
end.
gotcha.
All right. Okay. So what inspired you to kind of? I know we were briefly talking the last time. What what really inspired you to go back and revisit this series? Was it just because I know we briefly talked. This was primarily was inspired originally by your daughters, correct?
Um,
Or
Not
both?
exactly. I guess the main thing is sort of when the original series ended in 2015. That was sort of intended to be the end of it. And then right after that, I got involved with some producers who wanted to make a short film, and we did that. And then they wanted to have me write like a young adult novel. I did that, and then that led to writing a screenplay. So like, even though the series ended in 2015, I've been working on Dead of 17 behind the scenes like nonstop. So like, doing these other versions, I came up with like all these different new ideas and ways the story could go. So like, when sort of none of that sort of developed into anything as of yet anyway, I was like, I've got all these new ideas and stuff. What if I just went back to the comic and sort of relaunched it, but from a new point of view? As like when I created the original series, I was my early 20s, so 17 wasn't that far off from me. Now I'm turning 49, so like 17 is like much farther in the rear view. So I thought it'd be more interesting if I had it came with the characters, much later in life, and how they're getting along, and what happens once the past starts catching up with them. So that was sort of the genesis of the idea of this new series.
Okay. And I know when we briefly talked, this was the series that actually got me hooked into your art, your work, because there was just so much. Though I was a little bit older when I first discovered it, but there was just like a lot of the stuff that I really, really liked. Especially with the faith based aspect of it, and then of course, you were hitting like the kind of elements for zombie type things. There was just like a lot of different things you're dealing with, in there. Plus, as the later on series goes on, you're adding like some of the more like different takes on like end time events and stuff like that, which I thought was really cool. And I think as a Christian myself, and I know you and I have briefly talked off and on, as a fellow believer too. It was just something you were exploring differently with Nara and how she would be interacting with this type of event. That would happen, and I
Right.
think that's that I think for me that was like such a big reason why I resonated with the series. It's just and it was really cool because I saw the series really because to me, I know you were published by Viper first, and then you moved to Image. I really saw it kind of as an indie series, and that you're kind of that in between, like indie, but you were still mainstream, especially with being published by Image. But Image kind of really isn't, I don't think, unless you're published like by the high end guys, like or you're written like they do a lot of indie people, or
Hmm.
semi indie people, But
Right.
to me, it was like always like, hey, look, here's a guy who is doing his own thing, his own comic and stuff like that. He's not working for Marvel or DC, but he's printing his own stuff through Image Comics. And to me, like that was like a big thing, and that's what just multiple things that really just pulled me into your series and stuff like that. And of course, then we've talked before about like what you did with T-Bird and Throttle, and it's like, and now of course you're coming back to Dead at 17. It's like, it's like everything for me is like coming round circle. Here I am. Also, I'm about a year older than you. I turned 50 in November because I know your birthday's around the same time as mine. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it is interesting looking back at a series that is, what now? What 25 years?
2003. So
Oh yeah, so 20
not
22 years.
yeah. So not much longer. It'll be 25. Yeah.
25, yeah. So and definitely, I could see where I mean, from what I've seen on the Kickstarter, I mean it's just blowing up fantastically. I mean, funded within what 48 minutes.
Yeah. 45 minutes. Yeah. I think that's my fastest funding ever. So yeah, it was really awesome.
So, and right now, currently sitting at, I'm going to bring up the thing here. We're sitting at 296 backers, which is uh um yeah, Yoshi. Unfortunately, I have a new audio and mic. I have to get it cleaned up here, so I apologize. So, oh, actually, you just gained three more backers.
Yeah. 299, I think. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So let me go back here. Yeah, unfortunately, rip. um, give me a second here. I'm just waiting for it to load here. Let me see here where we are at here. Yep. So we're at 18,357. So how many backers have you had before on? Like, is this the same amount of like? Is this like your highest amount of backers too?
Oh no, no, not. I mean, not. I mean, hopefully by the end it will be. I hope. But no, I think I hit close to 5 the last time
Five five
on.
hundred.
Yeah, the last set of 17. Yeah.
Okay. So what? Hopefully, more people will come back. That will that back before will jump on a board on again.
Yeah. Today, I think today's the midpoint. Today it's officially. So there's still till 2 weeks left to back.
Two
So.
weeks. Yeah, and we know this is kind of like the downtime, which is kind of why I wanted to get you on now because
Right.
you and I both know it's running crowdfunders before that mid pace is always that law,
Right. Yeah.
in the crowdfundings. Unfortunately, you get that big shoot in the beginning, and then you get that plateau in the middle, and then at the end you kind of get more backers. So hopefully, more will go through. But and let's see here. And unfortunately, Twitch people are going into ads, but we're still live on YouTube and Kick. So, all right. Now, let's see here. So, what inspired you with Nara? What was her genesis? We're gonna kind of, since we're dealing with a new crowd here, just want to talk with people to kind of give her more of a background, like who she was and stuff like that.
Well, the initial genesis isn't really that exciting. I was just drawing um girls from like a catalog. Like it was like I don't know if you remember back in the 90s. I don't know if you were aware, like there was this girls catalog called Delia's with like the
Right.
hip fashion of the time. And I would just draw girls out of that, just drawing for practice. And like one of the girls that just had short hair that just I started drawing her as a character that just became before I even had a story. I had this character I just didn't know what to do with, and then I had this idea to do a story. I wanted to do something that was sort of like Evil Dead meets Twin Peaks, and she sort of found her way into that, and it was kind of a progression, a build up over. It wasn't like I had this like pitch idea. I was like, it's going to be this. It gets slowly developed until it became what it was, you know. So,
Right, right.
um,
Okay.
but yeah, and of course, just the idea of like, I mean, for me, this goes without saying, but this the idea that present a world where, you know, God is real. It's a matter of fact, and not,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I wasn't presenting something to be debated. It's like, oh no, this is real. God's real. Evil is real, and this is the way the world works, type of thing. You know.
Right.
Um, so I kind of took it as it was like a given that Nara would be coming from a point of view of a person of faith, even though it wasn't like she never had to explicitly say I'm a Christian. It was baked into it because if you notice a lot of most mainstream secular entertainment, they don't come out and give you their manifesto at the beginning and say this is what
Right.
we believe, right? They take it as a matter of fact that their worldview is true, and then they tell a story within that framework,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's sort of the idea of the way I approach my stories. So
Okay.
you can pick it up along the way, but because to me it comes from a place of like confidence, I guess, and hoping the audience will like ask questions or and dig deeper. Um, Instead of me coming from a place of, "Oh, I've got to convince them of something," um, just present it, as a matter of fact.
Right. Yeah, I mean I think generally those are where you really kind of tell the best stories. You know, when you're approaching. I think for the most part, somebody's belief structure already intact. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? You're
Right.
because I think a lot of times what I think Christian media tends to suffer from, and I'm sure you probably agree, is a lot of times they spend a lot of time kind of setting that like, oh well, this is a person who's who's coming to faith because of this particular reason, instead of already
Right.
being in that moment. You know what I mean? I think
Yes.
I see that kind of like um what was it? Joseph Fiennes did I want to say was it Joseph Fiennes? The not he did a movie where he was a centurion, and he was the one who was assigned to crucify Christ and stuff like
Right.
that. But I don't know if you ever saw that movie or not. But
Yeah,
like
I think so.
you already saw like the way they established it. Like he was already like the opening shots. Like he was questioning things already. You know what I mean? And then they go into the flashback. So they already set that narrative with him that it was already done. You know what I mean? You didn't have to worry about getting this whole backstory about how he lost his faith and this and stuff like that. It was about his faith coming to Christ, you know what I mean, and seeing who Christ really was and stuff like that. And I think that's
Right.
where I think a lot of times secular does a little bit better than Christian mainstream. And I really like to see more Christian mainstream stuff actually kind of embrace those things, spending less time on those meta narratives and just bake it in automatically. Like you already know this is a person of faith. I'm trying to think of what other stuff kind of does that. No, but I think yeah, I think for the most part, and I see that also a lot of times with Christian comics too. They kind of spend that time frame. You know what I mean? Setting that world
Right.
narrative, and I know in comics though you're kind of building a world and stuff like that, but it's needed. But sometimes you just like just throw it right in because I think that's what I'm going to be doing with Volt. Like Volt is going to be just kind of you're going to know just from the beginning. You know what I mean? Just
Mhm.
by the title, like where he's at automatically and stuff like that. And I think that's the better way to tell stories, in my opinion. And I agree with you on that. Um, now, Hazy, who of course is, Nara's best friend. So what's the relationship going to be like between the two of them now that they're kind of in this? They've dealt with this as 20 years later and stuff like that.
Um, yeah. So, um, they have not seen each other in 20 years. When the story starts. So, Hazy, she was there when Nera, you know, she saw Nera resurrected, and then everything around that started put on a path to like really start questioning and um, looking into things. And so she took a career path into the FBI, you know, wanting to specifically, she's like in the like counter cult division, as the way I've written it, and so she's very much interested in sort of, you know, uh, what led to Nara ending up, you know, where she was and all that. And so she's been on the side searching for Nara. She knows the world at large doesn't know that Nara still lives. Okay, so she's the only one that really saw Nara, you know, resurrected in this version of the story. So she knows she's out there somewhere. She doesn't know where. So she's been looking for her this whole time. Meanwhile, Nara is living under a new name, new identity, you know, trying to run from her past for reasons that I'll go into more in the story. But she's has good reasons for wanting to stay away, and they've kind of, in some ways, inversed. Where Hazy is, I would say, more on the straight and narrow path, and Nara, not that she's fallen away, but she's more of in a questioning spot because of all that's happened to her.
Hmm.
A little bit more jaded, I would say. So it's going to be interesting to see, you know, when they finally catch up to each other, what'll happen. So that will be something to discover in the story as we go along.
Cool. I really like this opening panel. I thought it was really cool. Like, all right, I don't know if this is the actual opening panel for the first page, but this when you posted these shots, I was like, man, this is awesome. Because I'm getting that, get a lot more. Like I've noticed, you pulled some elements from like how T-Bird Throttle paneling and stuff was. So, I noticed
Mhm.
that like your art has every time I see you, your art keeps leveling up even more. So it's like
Oh, thank you.
oh man, I gotta talk to Josh about this. It's like his art is just great. I love it. So you know, we're looking at, of course, you got posting some additional stuff in here and stuff like that. Now how many pages are planned in the comic?
This new issue one, which by the way, this is a new beginning. You don't have to have read anything that comes before this. This is like
Okay.
considered a brand new story. So if you know nothing about the series and never read it, it's fine. This is meant to be a fresh start. So it's meant to be. This is going to be like around 50 pages plus, um, and so it's going to be a bigger issue. So yeah, so it'll hopefully it won't go. I mean, I don't want to overpromise, but it's going to be at least 50. It could be significantly more. We'll have to wait and see. Like when I write my scripts, I don't do it by page or panel. I kind of have a rough idea of. I can feel like I've been doing it long enough where I know roughly about how many pages my scripts are.
Mm-hmm.
But when it gets to like when it starts to get around on 50, 60 pages, it's a little bit harder to gauge.
Right.
um,
Right.
um, but it'll be around that much. So
One thing I've noticed, especially when we were writing, when we were doing the last Sporkman comic, was we had a page limit set at 20 pages. Trying to filter a story into 20 pages, I don't know how mainstream does it because it is really hard to
well,
really.
that's how I started. You know, like back in the Viper days. You know, was doing 20-page bursts. But of course, back then it was easier because it was my first time. I didn't, you know, when like doing that many pages felt like just monumental in and of itself. You
Hmm.
know, when I was that young and like figuring it out. So like, you know, as I've gotten older and like I think hopefully better at writing and drawing, it's um definitely not, you know, yeah, doing 20 pages is feels impossible at this point.
Well, do you feel that way even as a writer too? Like trying to, condense. If you had to condense your stuff, did you feel like it was harder to condense your stuff as a writer now versus when you were younger and writing?
Um, I don't know. It's a good question. Like, also too, back then, like when I first started at 17 at Viper, like it was kind of a very much sort of like because when they hired me, it was to do another book, a different book, and then that book fell through. So like, we need something else, and I already had the Dead of 17, like the mini comic in my portfolio. They're like, what if we did a book about? What if we did your book? And I hadn't really planned it out. Like it was just kind of like a one thing that I had done. And so when I started it with Viper, I didn't really have a full plan in mind. So I was kind of doing it on the fly, like in a way, because
Yeah.
like I hadn't thought that far forward at the time. Um, Now of course, like I'm writing, huge chunks and plots and outlines in advance.
Hmm.
Um, Back then it was much more just, sit of your pants.
Understandable. Understandable. Okay. All right. And chat, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put it in chat, and I'll definitely ask Josh here. Let's see here. Now, I do know that one thing I was really surprised at was how many covers you have going this time around. I was like, wow. I'm like, when I'm looking over, I'm like, I don't know which cover I want. These are so good. I'm like, oh, but I gotta no. If I just had the money, but I know when I was talking with you, I was like, I gotta get an art piece though, because I really wanted something from T-Bird Throttle, but unfortunately, every time I got to back your T-Bird Throttle, they had already been the artwork pretty much goes right out the door very quickly.
Yeah, right.
So I'm not sure where exactly I was on this one, but I was glad to actually be able to back and get an art piece from you. So and here I'm just paging through the different covers here. So what inspired you to do the kind of the different styles of the covers? Yeah, I know you have like a battle damage one and some on a few different ones, and then you have kind of like the more brutal style. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, look, I know like one of the strengths of a lot of campaigns that do really well is that they'll have multiple covers and variants of the same cover and et cetera. And like I haven't really gone this big before, and I thought I'd give it a shot, and also thought it'd be cool to maybe do 17 covers for 10 to 17 for
Oh,
this new
okay.
launch. Maybe it was insane, but um, yeah, and like I just thought it'd be fun. I always like doing like either homages, different styles for whenever I do a campaign to do something to keep it fun. And so this time I thought I'd really like to do, an anime manga style. Because back when I did the very first mini comic that I was talking about earlier, the Data 17 black and white,
Yeah.
my influences were much more. If you look at that, you see a lot of panels in there that it's like, oh, that looks like manga.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was like definitely a bigger influence back then. So in some ways, it was kind of going backwards for me to like, let's see if I can do it again. Let's see if I can do it now. Let's see if I can pull it off. And people seem to have responded pretty well to it. Um, so I added that hazy version, as an add-on.
Right.
Um, because I wasn't sure I was going to go over first. So I was like, I'll wait and see if anyone likes them, and I'll do the other one. But if not, so yeah,
And
so that was
that
fun.
that and that's the art piece I got. Was the manga cover, because I was really surprised. Like, who is and I wanted to ask you, is like, who is your inspiration on the manga side? Like, who is like some of your mangakas that you like, or even just mangas, like that you enjoyed reading over the years.
Um, I'm really not very well read or knowledgeable specifically about a lot of that. I mean, I knew of a few things back then. I think uh, the artist of um, Plastic Little, I think his name's Satoshi Urushihara, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, that character looks like Nara um, in that story. So, like, that was probably a one that was early on. Also, too, this is kind of weird. I don't know if this is like um, legitimate influence or not, but like the Star Wars manga that came out from Dark Horse
Okay.
back in the day, I remember loving that thing. Um, I don't remember who the artist is though on that, but
Was it Adam?
No, he did the covers. He didn't do the interiors. The interiors is from a
From
Japanese artist.
okay, so you knew who I was talking about for the American artist who did the covers. The same guy who did
Yeah,
the
Adam
covers
Warren.
for
Yeah.
yeah, Adam Warren. Yeah, because he's the same one who did the covers for the Gunsmith Cats. Because that when I saw Nora, when I saw the manga cover, I'm like, she kind of reminds me of a little mix between Nara and or excuse me, Rally and May. I don't know if you ever read Gunsmith Cats at all.
No, no. I'll take your word for it though. Thank you.
Like I kind of got that feel. Like I could feel like especially the late '90s
Hmm.
manga. I definitely could feel like that style. You know what I mean? Like it was coming through kind of with the big
Yeah.
eyes and stuff like that. I was like, oh man, I gotta get that. I'm like that's a cover I gotta get because I really like it. I think you pulled it off very well. And I was like, that definitely has to go. Now, of course, if I had that, I would take the double attack page. But that was a little. Wow, so it's 20. Oh, I didn't realize it was 22 by 17. Ooh, give
Yeah.
me a second here. Hold on. Give me a second here, guys. My sister's calling me here. Give me a moment here. Give me one moment. Put them in the back where Ray's room is. I'm on stream. No, I'm off today. All right, sorry about that, guys. My two kittens just got thrown out. Someone threw two kittens out, so my niece, who's like the cat whisperer, found them and brought them in. So anyhow, uh, but all right, now let's get here. Okay, and then we go. Yeah, cause see, even your manga hazy, you could definitely tell the influence of that like I said, that late '90s manga feel. So that really pulled
Oh,
very, very good. So
thank
I
you.
really like it.
Thanks.
Unfortunately, now are you gonna because I couldn't adjust my order because the way I have it set up, I'm gonna have to probably order the comic issue afterwards. Are you gonna have? Do you know if you're gonna have available that particular cover by any chance?
Um,
Like in your
you talking about the
store?
hazy cover?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, yeah, I overprint a little bit of everything, so
Okay.
um, I'll just buy a little bit. So what I should have some left over once I do finish fulfillment. So
Okay. Well, if you
yeah,
still have it, I'll contact you. Reach out and stuff like that. Yeah, because
yeah, for sure.
I actually I'm actually in the middle of working on redesigning my character because right now I have a chibi model and stuff like that for my avatar. One of my friends, Mr. Grin, he's an artist too, so I'm working with him to create 2.0. But I also wanted to commission you at some point here. I wanted to talk to you about commissioning something for you at some point once you get a little downtime.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
you know, because I really would love to see Volt drawn in your style. Like I really think it'd be awesome. And of course, off piece. And there's some great artists out there, and I gotta support my friends and my brothers in Christ. So, all right.
yeah, for
So
sure.
as of today, of course, we have 2 weeks. And also, you do have, and this is for everyone available. I know you do have the both the compendium. Now the add-ons, the compendium, those are the one for 20 and 15. Those are the digitals, right?
Um, it depends what you're talking about. There is a digital for the complete collection from the original series.
Yeah,
There's
the
also an
complete.
add-on. There's also an add-on for the compendium, which is like only volumes 1 through 3. That's a
Oh,
physical.
okay. That's
Um,
a physical. Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Oh, that's not gonna add the other stuff like we were talking about, like your later issues and stuff like that. Because I know they're technically broken down in arcs and stuff like that. Correct.
yeah. Um,
Okay.
But again, like yeah, those are just if you want, to have a full picture of everything and where it's been. But again, like if you're brand new and just want to start, you can just start with this issue one, and you don't need to know any of that stuff. But if you have read it, I think it'll be definitely an enhanced experience because you'll be able to see, oh, this is what's different. Oh, this is where this person is now. So um, I think it'll be good either way. So
Awesome. And then, of course, I'm going to just briefly mention, of course, you did T-Bird and Throttle, which highly recommend if you're a fan of superheroes. You definitely want to get into T-Bird and Throttle. It is, I know, Josh, you and I have talked about it. It's basically a reconstruction of superheroes.
right,
These heroes are basically broken down and rebuilt and stuff like that. Which is, I know you and I have talked about this multiple times. Like, it is, it's a thing that you like. And I know I like to. I like my heroes being heroes. So, hey
yeah,
Dave, welcome in, brother. I know I'm not a big fan of as much as some of the stories like um like the Dark Knight Returns and stuff like that, like the heroes being reconstructed and stuff like that. I'm not a big fan of. Um, I don't know if you've been reading any of the Absolute series at all from DC at all. The Absolute
no, I
Superman
have
or
not.
Batman one. So they actually have done a because these are they kind of did what you did with the this new telling of a hero and stuff like that. Rebuilding. And they basically what they did was they took Superman. What if he was in a world where Martha and Jonathan did not exist? But like he actually lived on Krypton till an older age and stuff like that, and so he doesn't have the Fortress of Solitude and stuff like that. And now the Batman one wasn't the greatest. Like I fell off the Batman one, but both the Wonder Woman and Superman have been really good. So they're kind of reconstructing these heroes while they're taking some of the events away. They're the things, for instance, like Batman in the Batman series, he doesn't have his money. His parents are actually like his father is a school teacher and his mother is a like she works to help like homeless people and stuff like that. I don't want to say an activist, but you know what I mean. So like she helps
Yeah.
out those kind of people and stuff like that. So I mean it's an interesting dynamic. Like Clark's parents are his actual like Jarrell and Laura are farmers, and they both are kicked out of the science academy and everything. So like the L's are actually like an outcast on Krypton. So
Okay.
there's kind of like these things, but they're here. Like he's actually a hero, like retooled. You know what I mean? And I think that's really cool. Like seeing these different takes on heroes, the way they're not dark and brooding. Like Superman's kind of emo. You remember how the emo style was in the '90s and stuff like that. He's still emo, but he's not like the dark and brooding version of being emo and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So like
Right.
I like seeing those kind of things. Now, going into Black Harvest, which I know you recently just redid here. You did a Kickstarter for that, where and I know we talked about that. Where it is basically a complete remaster of the book, which you successfully completed that crowdfunder. And I'm still working on the review of it because I'm going to actually do what you did. Take the original and the remaster and kind of compare the two difference. You know,
Okay.
but I've read the original. Just haven't had a chance to read the remaster, but I feel that it is a great series. So I highly suggest for people. He's got a lot of stuff for you to jump on. If you're into which we're going to talk about some of the things that we really like. Sci-fi, aliens, and all this stuff from a Christian point. But those things are Josh, I know you have something for everybody. You have a superhero comic, you have this dark with Black Harvest, and then of course you have the Dead at 17, for faith, for people of faith. So I that's what I really like about you. You have these as a creator, you're hitting all these different genres that are important.
Yeah. I've never been, pegged into one genre or whatever. So like, I have lots of ideas. I do probably tend more towards horror
Mm-hmm.
overall, just because I think there's more of an opportunity there to do like spiritual type stories. Because the supernatural is being real and all that. I think naturally lends itself to those kinds of stories, you know.
Hmm.
But T-Bird too still has got it's very faith based in the sense that it's a different world. It's like an alternate version of our Earth, um, but it's got its own religion and stuff that's very that mirrors Christianity.
Hmm.
Um, just everything's got different names and stuff. That'd be fun to just do like a different, sort of, in the way that uh, Lord of the Rings has the Silmarillion, where it's like its own creation account, but it still mirrors the Christian version.
Right, right,
Sort of the same idea. Yeah.
right. You know, as somebody of faith, like how, like, was it always important for you to wanting to include that aspect in your comics? And I'm gonna kind of get into the body horror aspect too, because I know that your stuff deals with body horror. By any chance, are you a fan of Cronenberg? By any chance?
I am not, and I don't. I generally don't like body horror stuff.
Okay, because that's interesting, because you
Yeah,
got a
I know.
lot of it in your. I don't think it's not gory the way David Cronenberg stuff is. I mean, it's definitely not like that way. So you're more like the Thing, I would say. Are you a fan of the Thing?
No,
Oh, okay,
I'm not actually. I don't. I'm not big on gore and gross out stuff, to be honest.
okay.
Lots of blood splattering is okay. Like that's fine. But when it comes to like guts and gross mutation type stuff, no, it's not my thing.
Not your thing. So let me
No.
ask this: would you be so if I had to group you, so you'd be more like old school horror if looking at it from the aspect. So like say like early Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, I like a lot of 60s, 70s stuff. For sure.
Like where it was all implied but not like in your face of everything.
Yeah, but it also, but um, like I said, lots of, I mean, like how Hammer would have like the very like bright red blood
Mm-hmm.
uh, and of course like Evil Dead's got the spraying of blood, and that's also like a lot of kung fu, the just over the top blood spray type thing.
Right, right, yeah.
That I can get behind. That's fun, but yeah.
All right, give me 1 second here, guys. On Twitch, ad will be starting in 1 minute. Unfortunately, got to do the ads on Twitch where I don't have to worry about that on kick in YouTube. So that's a downside, But all the bane of being an affiliate and stuff like that. But all right, let's take a look here. So yeah, just trying to think here what else we can really kind of talk about here on this before shifting into any other topics. Some of the other topics. Um, Oh yeah, because I know you are a big fan of Twin Peaks. How much is that element like reflected in Dead at 17?
Um, Quite a bit. I mean, I don't try to like mimic David Lynch or anything because I think he's. I mean, you could try, but I think there's only one David Lynch, and
Correct. Yep.
um, but there's definitely elements that like that was such a important show in my formative years. Like I was like 12, I think 13 when that show aired, and it just really like I just resonated with me like
Mm-hmm.
big time, and it just like it's just in my bones. And so like there was things in Dead of 17, just it's a lot of superficial stuff, like you know Nara being killed at 17 as Laura Palmer was. She had this diary, um, the FBI agent type thing, and but I wouldn't say the similarities in there in a lot of ways. It's but again, I still even in this new version, I still am like borrowing from that in a lot of ways. Um, if you read Kill Day, which is sort of like the bridge between the old continuity and the new,
Right.
there's definitely some dream logic type stuff going on there that's I would say probably is has some influence, from Twin Peaks. Um, and just look at the cover of the new book Revival, and there is in the blue waitress uniform, which is an obvious nod.
Right.
So yeah, it's,
I would think even as me as a writer, like I don't think there's anything wrong with that because I know like me as a writer, I have like a lot of like, especially from the Bible. Like I have a lot of elements, from the Bible, or even say Brian Lumley's one of my favorite book writers. And I don't know if you know him at all as a horror writer.
Hmm.
I echo like a lot of the stuff like he has in terms of like his fantastic world building, like how he writes and stuff like that in terms of like being very descriptive, and that's how I like to write too. So it's like I don't think there's anything wrong pulling from you, because these are people that are inspiration. Because I'm sure no matter how Stephen King tries to pan it, he's probably pulling from other writers too. You know what I mean? And I know
Right.
probably Brandon Sanderson's probably pulling from I would say other ones, and a lot of our sci-fi writers now probably pull from Asimov, and you know what I mean. So I don't think there's anything wrong, seeing those elements in a story, because it is something that is formative of your years, be it either your young years or even now, in your 40s,
Oh no, of course not. I wouldn't. I wasn't trying to imply that anything was wrong with that. Like I
No, not
obviously
at all.
my work is steeped in influences, and everyone else's is. I think David Lynch in particular, I singled him out just because like he does have a uniqueness, and some people will try to imitate just his you know um, and sometimes it just falls flat because you can tell they're trying to imitate Lynch. Um, instead of just taking what was there and being influenced by it.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and I just think he's just one of those that I just put on a pedestal as far as creative minds, and um, yeah, I wouldn't want to try to like imitate what he does, but I definitely am influenced by it for sure.
Okay. Let me get this message. Give me a second here. Sorry. Twitch and its wonderful things it likes to do. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free. Those who are in chat. I did put the links to the Kickstarter into the chat for everybody, so that way you guys can back the project. I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic series. This is a great jump on point, and I think that's um, Bob goes. He says, y'all make me want to watch Dune. Hey, nothing wrong with that, man. I don't care
Yeah,
how campy it is. I love Dune. So
absolutely.
I love Dune. Yeah, coming back to it, David Lynch is like that. That's kind of like somebody going and trying to copy. I'm just trying to think of like Cronenberg. Like you can't copy Cronenberg. There's these people like that have these set styles, and you just can't copy them. In my opinion, you can try, but
Right,
you can't. It just most times fall flat. And I think like in a lot of ways, that's what people try to do is they try to imitate stuff that really kind of blurs the line, if that makes sense.
right.
You know. All right. So anyhow, we're link it for the crowdfunder again, guys. In the Kickstarter is in chat. Let's go ahead and let's get Josh funded even more, and I'm sure you guys will not be disappointed at all. Josh is a fantastic creator and writer, and a wonderful brother in Christ. I know we wanted to segue because I know last time we were talking about kind of getting you on to talk some faith elements and like things that we really like.
Yeah,
Because we were talking to Black Harvest, like our like the view of aliens, like where do we fall on that
right.
subject? And we were like, man, we really want to talk about this, but I only had you for a certain amount of time, So it's like,
Yeah.
and I know you're busy, and I didn't want to really I don't like to bother people when they're busy and stuff like that. So, which is kind of why I said, hey, can we talk about this now? And I'm not sure how much more
Yeah.
time you have here, but
I've got a little time, so yeah. Let's. What
okay,
do you want to talk about? I'm here. So
okay. So
yeah,
because when we were talking about Black Harvest the last time, of course, that's when the FBI and the CIA and everybody was coming out with all their alien, bodies and stuff like
mhm,
that. Um, where
right.
where do you fall? On the
So
alien
so
conspiracy.
yeah. Um here's sort of what I generally think. I think the phenomenon is real. But I don't believe it's alien. I think it's there's a spiritual interdimensional component to it.
Mm-hmm.
However, I also believe there's a physicality to it as well that um, the craft can or have been recovered. They are physical, but they originate from a higher dimension.
Okay.
Um, I think, yeah, I think the bodies. I don't know how deep do you want to go into this.
Oh, I'm all for focus because I
Okay.
have my thing, and I'll I'll let you tell your thing, and I'll do mine, and
Okay.
we'll see how we
Okay.
piggyback off each other.
All right. Here's where I lose everybody. Okay. So obviously, I'm basing, my theories based on all the reports that have come out over the last, 50, 60 years from insiders, government reports, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it appears to me, I believe there have been bodies recovered, and by all accounts, they seem to be. I see a lot of people, from the inside saying they call them drones or
Mm-hmm.
even like biological robots, because they don't appear to have internal organs.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So what I think they are is manufactured basically meat puppets for to house demonic spirits.
Ooh, okay,
Um,
okay, okay.
yeah, because the disembodied demons need a physical host, and I think whether these are just the way they look or they're making them to look a certain way, I don't know. Like I don't know what the reasoning is for their appearance. Um, but that's what I think. Um, and I think that's why there's some mystery as to like what they are when the government has found them. And like I think the last hearing they called them biologics.
Right.
Um, I think they are kind of baffled by what they're finding because they're organic ish, but like I said, maybe no one organs or whatever. Um, so tangentially, I think possibly maybe this is why there's reports of cattle mutilations. Is it that's where they're getting the biological material, perhaps,
Interesting.
to make these
Okay.
constructs? Um, yeah, so I think this is all just a whether it's an intentional deception. I mean, it's a deception regardless. I think the intent obviously is to deceive people into thinking that we have space brothers and they're here to help us, or et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I do think it's malevolent and yeah. Um,
Well,
I don't know.
you
Um,
and I actually have very close beliefs then, because I'm kind of the same way. I believe it's demonic. Um,
yeah.
and I believe that it is the reason why I know it's demonic is because and I harken back to. Do you remember in the Bible when Elisha is talking with his servant, and he's talking about how the Syrians are coming in to attack the city and stuff like that, and they've surrounded the city, and and his servant is freaking out, and Elisha's like, "Hey," he prays to God, and God like lift his eyes and his veil so my servant can see. And when the servant looks up, he sees all the heavenly hosts surrounding the Assyrians and stuff like that. So like
Mhm.
my thought process is the same thing. Is like the spiritual realm is closer than what we think it is, and demons themselves.
Right.
And I agree, because they are disembodied spirits. They need something, because they can't indwell a blood bought believer. They can't indwell a Christian. So they're going to try to go to
Right.
an unbeliever. Well, if they can't get into an unbeliever, because an unbeliever has to welcome them in too, through either whatever process, using tarot cards, and because I'll have to tell you about my demonic. I've had two demonic things happen in my life that I think, this is why when you hear Christians warn about, so like, I don't think everything's a gateway for demonic things, but there are certain things that are like definitely 100%, like Ouija boards,
Mhm.
like tarot cards and stuff like that.
Right.
I think demons have to be invited in, kind of like the vampire lore. They have to be invited into the body. Now, can they oppress people? Yes, 100%, because that's not requiring actual physical touching of a body. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Oppression is different from
Right.
possession. And I agree with you. The other reason I think they need, the reason why I think they need DNA is, again, I agree with you. Do you remember even back? I don't know how much you know, like in when Jacob, why I think the Nephilim 100% has to deal with genetics and stuff like that. That partly why God destroyed the world was because fallen angels that fell, came down to Earth, and they started mucking with the human genome and taught humans how to cross the barrier, basically, to say that's how we got our myths. The Minotaur, like Medusa,
Hmm.
and stuff like that.
Right.
And they need these bodies. So these bodies they can interact with our physical world because, again, we know angels can do the same thing. And what are there's good angels and there's bad angels. Well, demons are still spiritual beings, and they have the ability of manipulating stuff. And I easily could see them manipulating human DNA through whatever means they do. You know what I mean? And it's all Earth based here. It is not in some other distant galaxy and stuff like that. I consider them interdimensional beings, not inter inter interstellar. Uh,
Right.
and one of my inspirations for that is from the wonderful Chuck Missler. I don't know if you know him or not.
Of course.
When I heard his stuff on the whole interdimensional thing, it made so much more sense because, again, when you're dealing with or interspatial, people don't realize, like, while it takes 3 days for us to get from here to the moon, as you get further and further out, the distance gets so exponentially great. You know what I mean? Here, give an example. Here we are, what, 75, 80 years since Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 got released. They're now just on the edge of the galaxy. Now, they are not going that fast in terms of the speed of light. They're only going like 1/10 the speed of light. But still, 80 years is a long year, and they're just right at the edge of the solar system right now. So it would be almost impossible for any creature to jump between galaxies and distance, because if and even we sit on the outer edge of one of the spirals and stuff like that. I mean, it's 100,000 light years across from edge to edge. That's a long time. I think the human brain can't understand that. So that's why I believe in interdimensional beings versus interspatial beings.
Yeah, and like I don't even if all that's possible, space travel is possible, all that stuff. Like to me, you have to look at what these creatures or the aliens, UFOs, whatever term you want to use. You look at what they're doing, the things they say. It's all comes from a place of anti-Christian sentiment. I mean, they, in abductions, there's tons of reports of people using the name of Jesus to halt the abduction or make them stop completely.
Yep.
um, the messages they send to people are usually like, "Oh, we're the ones who created Jesus," "Oh, um, we're here, to make peace, but you got to put your old ways aside. You got to Jesus was just one of us, was just another alien." There's always this undermining of Christianity that's going on, and then you look at just their activity as the abduction experience is very oppressive and
Mm-hmm.
twisted and just the whole phenomenon just seems to be designed to take people's eyes off, to deceive people, to because how many times do you see hear the people say like, "Oh, if this is confirmed as real, it's going to destroy religion," and it's like, I know that's their intention, obviously, but to me, if you know the truth behind the phenomenon, to me, it only can only strengthen your faith. And sometimes I wonder if that's why some of the reason for government secrecy is because maybe people on the inside realize what they're dealing with, and that if the truth came out, what it really is, that it would open people's eyes um,
And
to
if you
the,
ever,
you know.
I was gonna say, if you ever notice, they never blast any other religion. It's
Oh,
always
right.
yeah, it's always, you know, Christianity is wrong. Christianity got it wrong. You know what I mean? And I was reading recently the who Valet, was it Valet, the one who uh with the abduction, where he was doing like there's a guy who compiled like all the reports from Jacques Vallée's research and stuff like that on alien
Hmm.
abduction, and he was showing about like how, like you said, in every case, like these abductions were halted in the name of in Jesus's name, or every demonic thing that has happened has always been. And in speaking from myself, and this is actually going to segue into this thing that I had. So a few months ago, I was going through a very faith struggle with where I was on my faith, and I felt like I wasn't honoring Christ correctly. I felt like I wasn't just doing things. I was just kind of falling into sin a little too much. You know what I mean? And I wasn't like being. That's kind of why I stopped streaming there for a little while, because I just was not feel like I was doing anything for the Lord. My faith was really weak at the time, and this one night, like I had this dream, and because I was just basically, God, I don't know if this is real. I don't know if everything's, am I really saved? You know, um, and so I had this really really weird dream, and it involved little babies. And it like these babies wanted to kept like, you ever play the game Silent Hill, or have you ever heard of the game Silent Hill?
I'm aware of it.
Okay, so there's these in the first Silent Hill. There's these little dark little demon babies that crawl around, and you just hear them. Well, that's kind of like what it was. I was experiencing. It was just very weird, and all of a sudden, I just woke up in that dream, and I just started crying out to the Lord, like apologizing, and I got down on my hands and knees, and I was repenting, and I knew for that night, I knew that the Lord removed His hand from me to show me, no, Chuck, you were saved. This is what I'm protecting you from. Just giving me
Hmm.
that glimpse. You know what I mean? And I had another dream a few weeks before that, and my grandmother passed away when I was back in 2001, right after September 11th, and so I had this dream where I was in we were in the place we live now, but my grandma was here, and she kept saying, hey, I love you, Charlie. You're doing really good, and she's like, but I just need you to let me in. I just need you to let me in, and they repeated it 3 times, and
Hmm.
my soul just right then and there. I woke up from the dream, and I was just crying out to the Lord, and I rebuked whatever it was in Jesus' name. And I was that rest of that night, I was able to finally fall back asleep. But yeah, it is like again, and that's where I think it's oppressive, because they still want to try to get in, and again, and I think because
Hmm.
I woke up, and that's the Holy Spirit waking me up, and rebuking it and stuff like that. I'm a firm believer that I think that the demonic is closer, and how this all came about was back in my 20s. I used to play around with tarot cards,
Oh.
so I opened myself up for, that's one of the downsides,
Hmm.
is you open yourself up for that protection and stuff like that, or against you open yourself up for that oppression when you're dealing with things you really shouldn't have been, and I'm a firm believer of that. So I don't know where you fall on that part at all,
Well,
but
yeah, part of the research for the UFO abduction thing is that if you trace all the cases, I mean, as far as I know, the ones, the research I've seen is that almost all the cases have occult activity beforehand. Like they were involved in something, or someone in their family was,
mm-hmm.
um, that opens the door for the abduction scenario to happen, you know. Um, so it's all connected, you know.
And I think Satan will do and use. He'll get his minions doesn't have the power of God. He doesn't have the ability to be everywhere the way God is, you know.
Hmm.
But colloquially, we like to say, Satan oppressed me or demons oppressed me and stuff like that, you know. But I think because in my younger years, and I think this is partly why I have been struggling so much, even now in my, being almost 50, I still deal with, that because I think Satan knows that there for a time he was able to oppress me. You know what I mean? And he was able to do that before. So
Hmm.
he's gonna try even now. You know what I mean? Even in my 50s. Even though uh, or my 40s, excuse me, my late 40s. But I just think that I think that's what he does is like, and he'll attach himself to wherever he can, be it a house or he'll put something like a house can be demonically, and this is where I think ghosts, because this actually goes into my whole ghost theories, that I think ghosts are. So when I think a human dies tragically, I think something is left behind, whatever, but like whatever the tragic event is, because we are partly, there are extra parts of us that we don't see. You know what I mean? And I think demons can manipulate that energy or whatever is left behind to take uh, appear as a ghost. And I think all ghost hauntings and stuff like that are
Hmm.
all demonic. I don't know where you feel on that. If that's the same thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, basically, yeah. I think there's no true like, you know, um, haunting per se, like like a dead relative or whatever. Or yeah, I think it's all demonically based deception for
Hmm.
sure.
I know. Oh, somebody redeemed one of my. Okay, that was weird. Oh my. So it looks like it's my game launching. Hold on. my one game launched in the background. Sorry about that. All right, give me a second here, guys. I gotta. Sorry about that. I had a. I got invited to do a play test of a game, so it was launching in the background just to make sure, it's ready for later on tonight. So sorry about that. Um,
No
so
worries.
all right, let me ask you. So recently, I also did my testimony, and you know, um, I was able to share with people, my childhood growing up, and I know you and I briefly talked about like where I came from and stuff like that. You know, um, when did you have you always grown up in the faith? Was your parents Christian, or did you become a Christian later on in life? Or you know,
Well, yeah, I grew up in a Christian home,
okay,
and I, formally accepted the Lord and got baptized at age 11. And then my teen years, like specifically age 17, I sort of had a wandering away and,
mm-hmm,
um, kind of went my own way, not knowing what I wanted to. You kind of, at a certain point, you kind of have to. Your faith is sort of based on your parents,
mm-hmm,
and then I'd sort of come back to it on my own and find it, you know, my own way, and that's sort of what happened. So it just ultimately reinforced my faith, and it was a faith that I could call my own instead of like, well, this is what my parents believe, right? You know, I had to come to my own realization, So, um,
I don't,
so
go ahead.
that was late teen years, and ever since then, as look, there's plenty of ups and downs. There's times you're not following as well as you should, and the times when
Right.
you know everyone's got those, and I've had plenty of ups and downs. But yeah, so I don't have like a big I saw the light moment. This has been a lifetime of growth and struggle. So
Right. And I think those are testimonies just as well. I know a lot of people like to make this big spectacle of, I've been helping a friend Celestium, and she has a Discord channel. But I've been helping with discipleship and Bible study and stuff like that. And I've been telling a lot of these guys are like, well, I always hear these people have these big stories, but that's not how I came to faith. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. That's how God can still
Hmm.
use you. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if you
Right.
have the big, God saved me from a life of sin and debauchery, and I was the drug, you know what I mean, the drug addict and stuff like that. It's just a simple like you. You believed early age. You then had to kind of reconcile that in your teen years, and I think pretty much everybody kind of goes through that period. And even now in my 50s, and I always tell my friend, he recently became a Christian about a year and a half ago, Steve. And I tell him, I said, there are going to be days you're going to question your faith. Are you really in the faith? I said, but that's when you're supposed to be questioning your faith, making sure you're in, because James tells us, you're supposed to examine your faith and making sure that you're in the faith. It's not supposed to be this, one and done thing. That like, oh, I'm saved, and therefore I'm going to heaven right away. No, our faith is supposed to be active. You know what I mean? It's not. It's supposed to be. And again, we get. I get that there's going to be days you and I or other believers are going to be deserts where we're like, okay, well, did I make this right decision? And you're not going to hear from God. And I tell people, I said, but that's when you want to be relying on God at that downtime, because that's when He shows up when you least expect it. You know.
Yeah, I mean, Bible says take up your cross daily. It's a daily decision you have to make. Not that your salvation is ever in doubt necessarily, but that you have to choose to follow. It just doesn't just happen. It requires action and
Right.
purpose and like no matter how you come to Christ, some people have a great story and God is glorified through that. And also God can be glorified just through someone, like I said, it's had a lifetime of faith, of service. God can use anyone, any story, for His purposes. So,
Exactly. I usually say, I said, as much as we want to be like Paul, most of us are not like Paul. you know, most
right,
most of us
right.
are gonna most of us are gonna have the simple calling, of say Matthew, or one of the any of the other apostles. Because if you ever notice, the Bible reflects the guys that had problems. Peter, and Paul. You know what I mean? They're the ones that are contrast. But what about James? Yes, we know brother of Jesus. He came to faith later on. Okay, but the Bible doesn't talk about how he came to faith. The Bible doesn't talk about like Matthew. Where did Matthew end up after where he was? Most likely we know they almost all of the early church fathers definitely you know died in some way for their faith. You know what I mean? Either
Hmm.
martyred
Right.
or. But at the same time, they probably won't. They don't have the biggest witness stories. We can be like Peter or Paul. We got these great stories, but then how many others like Bartholomew's or Andrews? You know what I mean? Like I think there's more. I think there's more than them than say Paul or Peter. In my opinion. I think there's more people who have a regular coming to faith, however it is, and even if it's just like yeah, I kind of believed in my younger years, but during my later years, actually one of my favorite content creators, Nate Sala, he runs the channel Wise Disciple. He was talking about how he grew up in the early church, but through his 20s and 30s, he just walked away,
Hmm.
and he lived his life the way he wanted to live his life, but then eventually God got a hold of him and called him back. So, there. But that's, I mean, that's how I think God uses people. Every story is unique, just like everybody has their own gifts that make themselves unique. You know, and that's why God calls us, because we all have different things to call to be to the church.
Right. Well, hey, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
S- So when we're talking about struggling with faith or whatever, like when you say that, like or when anyone says that, really, like I'm curious because even though I've had like my ups and downs, I've never doubted that God was real, that He existed. my issue is always with myself. Like I'm not good enough, or like I'm not praying enough, or et cetera, right? Like I've never had a crisis of like, does God real? Like, did this really happen? Like I've always been pretty certain in my belief on that. How about you? Or is that?
So yeah, so like I kind of so my interesting thing, and I don't know if you, I know I probably didn't have a chance to talk with you this. So I actually grew up. My mother was 7 Day Adventist. Um,
Okay.
she flipped between the churches. So again, I'm being exposed to heresy and stuff like that. But then at the same time, I'm a kid who let's just say I was not the easiest kid to get along with. Let's just leave it at that. This is why I eventually came to faith. The Lord really fixed me on a lot of stuff, but I was just a really bad kid. Give you an example. Now, I've told people, my story. Unfortunately, my stepfather essayed me multiple times throughout my childhood. He was a very evil, wicked person. So I would lash out in anger all the time. So like one time I picked up, so my anger was always coming from that. So I picked up on this toy truck. So you remember when we had those really big toy trucks made out of stainless steel?
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever remember those trucks, those Tonka trucks.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I took that one time and I threw it at him and I hit him with it. So I got put in a foster home into a Mennonite home. Well, that was actually being in the Mennonite home was actually my first exposure to the gospel, and then it cars kind of go from there. So my experience of struggling with my faith, meaning that there's times, yeah, that I'm like, am I really saved? Because I keep falling into the same patterns all over again. Like be it lust or pornography, whatever it is. I don't shy away from those topics, by the way, Josh. Just so you know, I will talk about those things because I think it's important for men to talk those things out. But anyhow, yeah. So kind of doing the same thing over and over again. Falling back into the same things. Am I really safe? So it's never really like. So it's not the head disconnect because we're called to reason our faith out.
Hmm.
Paul talks about it. In Galatians and in a couple of the other books, especially in Romans. That we're supposed to. We're supposed to reason our faith and stuff like that. But we're also supposed to have the heart too. And for me, it's always my head. I know that God's real, and I know what the Bible says is real, but my heart doesn't feel it. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
So it's really that disconnect. That's where I struggle with the faith part. Is like, why does my head know? I know all this is true. I know the Bible is real. I know because again, I've reasoned this stuff out because of history. Not just because of the Bible, but externally. By scripture. Here we have stuff. And I know all about textual criticism and stuff like that. But my faith has never wavered in that part. In terms of I've trusted that part, but I've never like it's the disconnect between the head and the heart. That's really where I struggle with a lot. And
Yeah.
trusting trusting that and again, it's like Satan does to you, like you were saying. Am I good enough? And that's where Satan likes to really sink his claws into me. Because well, I sinned. I looked at pornography today. Well, instead of going to Christ right away, I'm like, no, I sinned. Therefore, God doesn't want to hear from me right away. Do you know what I mean? And
Hmm.
that's where I have.
Right.
I was actually I was watching a really good video this past week on the John 1:1, and the pastor was talking about. He's like, look, he's like, you slip and you sin, you got to go to Christ right away. He's like, you cannot let that fester, because what it does is that gives Satan that into your life to get you to doubt God's faith and belief.
Right.
So
Yeah.
um, and so that's really what it is. It's not really doubting who God is, or like you said, it's not doubting who God is, who Christ is, or what God has done in the Bible, what He's written in the Bible. It's none of that. It's just that my heart just and I don't know why I have a hard time sometimes believing stuff like that, and it might be the years of being jaded. My heart's
Hmm.
not as as strong as it once was in terms of that, but yeah. So, but a good question though. So, any other topics you want to talk about? Yeah, I know we kind of briefly touched on the ghost and the aliens thing, and
Yeah. We solved all that, didn't we?
yeah.
We
So,
answered it all.
here's a question for you. Now, I'm not sure what your denomination is, and that's okay. I'm non-denominational. I did, so I originally was Seventh Day Adventist. I went through the Baptist phase for a little while, but I kind of settled on non-denominational because there are some things about denominations I'm not really a big fan of. Give you an example. The one churches I was going to, I've been wanting to get baptized. Every church I've been to says no, you need to be a member of the church in order to be baptized.
Yeah, that's silly to me. I'm pretty much non-denominational as well.
Okay. So and
Yeah.
I mean and so I don't I might attend a Baptist church. The one church attend is a Baptist church I go to, but I primarily watch like a lot of stuff like from different pastors. I don't just sit there and get all my stuff from one pastor. I listen to different pastors like J Mac, John MacArthur, like Vody Bokum, like Pastor Jack Hibbs, and stuff like that. And I parse myself up, in prayer with this Holy Spirit. I'm like, okay, well, does that line up to what Scripture says? Because again, denominations sometimes will have their own interpretation of what Scripture is. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I try not to
But
get too.
you mentioned Jack Hibbs. I love Jack Hibbs.
Oh, Pastor Jack has been
Yeah.
like he's been like one of my favorite pastors. The Calvary Chapel has been really kind of moving me in terms of where I was. Like I used to be what was considered a 5 points Calvinist. J Mac had been one of my
Mhm.
biggest inspirations. Him and Justin Peters, and I still love them by the way. But Pastor Hibbs, Chuck Smith, of course, and there's another guy I've been listening to. His name's Pastor Paul. He's out of Calvary Chapel, Ontario. Very wonderful teacher. So I've been listening to a lot of them. Of course, Pastor Chuck Missler.
Mhm.
Listen to him. Unfortunately, he's passed. They've been really helping inform my theology a long time. And I've also been kind of listening to John Bevere too. He's had some really good teachings that I've really liked. Now I don't agree with everything he teaches, but most of what he teaches is pretty biblically sound. I know he's more into like the gifts of the spirit and stuff like that, whereas I'm kind of more of a
Mhm.
sensationalist. I believe that like the apostolic gifts are closed. You know, especially like the gift of healing and like the gift of prophecy. Like foretelling. In terms of like somebody saying, oh, I have this prophetic word. I don't agree with that. But I do agree like the other gifts of the spirit that Paul mentions. Like exhortation and I see prophecy as foretelling and you're reading scripture and you're saying, hey, this is what we see in the future is coming down the road. This is what God decreed before, because he's declaring the end from the beginning. You know what I mean? So that like that kind of stuff, like that's where I believe that, like, but I don't believe that like I believe in the gifts of healing. Like I do believe the elders should come together and they should be praying over sick people, but it's still the Lord healing through them. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
so like I've shifted to more what I call a 2.5 Calvinist. Like I firmly believe like in the like original sin, like doctrine of depravity. Like I just think we need, no matter what, we need Christ to save us, and that's my view on that. Now I'm not sure where you fall on that. Like I don't think God calls, like we can't search God out. He has to call to us to start searching. It has to be that movement from the Holy Spirit. But where I do disagree with them is, for instance, like like they'll say like, oh well, God elects people to go to heaven and hell. I don't believe that. I believe that when God says, in John 3:16, for all have or excuse me, um, you know, when he says about Christ's death for everybody on the cross, that I firmly believe 3:16, John 3:16 is everybody, no matter what, through who have that chance of hearing the gospel and coming to Him. Now there are people that will not. Well, how you become part of the elect is those who accept the gift of salvation are who are gifted salvation, and God knows who's going to accept and reject Him based on His foreknowledge because of who He is. But He doesn't automatically determine that person, saying, "Hey, Chuck, you don't believe, so therefore you're going to hell." You know what I mean? I don't think that. I think but and a person has the ability of changing their mind at some point until the moment they die. So I don't know where you fall in on that.
Um, I, I don't take a really hard line on either way on any of that. I mean, I do have. I think there's good arguments on both sides, and I have leanings both ways. I wouldn't. I don't know. I think it's an interesting thing to discuss. I don't know that I have like a I'm this or I'm that. I do think, like I said, arguments. There are arguments on the Calvinist side for points that I think are very interesting and compelling, and then on the other side there's the same. So like I think it's interesting to debate them and talk about them, but I don't I'm not a hardliner really either way.
I think I don't know if you see this or not. There's a lot of times the Bible kind of argues both positions sometimes. In certain things. Especially like when you get into like the end times and stuff like that. There are times like the Bible argues these different things, and I think because somebody made a really good comment the other night in the one stream. They're like, well, why does God have all these different? Why do we have all these denominations with all these different views? And it's like, well, because sometimes we look at passages and because of our infallibleness of being humans, we parse things out, the way that God directs us to. You know what I mean? And a lot of times, there's positions I've held on one topic and I've shifted. There's other ones that I've been a hard, staunch, for instance, like I am a firm believer in once saved, always saved. I have really good friends who believe that you can lose your salvation. I hold on the side of once saved, always saved, meaning, but you still have to engage your faith. You still have to be, you
Uh-huh.
still have to be a practicing believer. You can't just say, hey, say the prayer and you're magically saved and you go to heaven. I don't believe that. I believe that a true believer, God's going to, if you stumble and fall and let's say you walk through the desert and you have that good time or bad time, God's going to do everything he can to pull you back in. That's where I firmly believe. But there are arguments because Paul makes them, and especially in the book of Hebrews, Paul, the writer of Hebrews, kind of argues, well, hey, you can choose to walk away from your faith because there are seems to be people that did walk away from being Christian. Were they saved and my argument comes down to, okay, well, were they saved in the first place or were they not saved at all? Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah, that's what I would. I mean, I think a true conversion you can't lose. Your true, that's a. But then there are those who are maybe not a true conversion, and that's what I tend to think is that, well, if they walked away, maybe they weren't really saved to begin with.
but
Yeah.
again, and I think that's what again, it's a topic that I love hearing. Like I've there's a fantastic gentleman I like is his name is Mahler. He runs what's called the Truth Cartel, and I like hearing the arguments for that side because as a person who's studied theology and stuff like that, I have my views and I have really good friends, who agree with me and stuff like that. But I think I like hearing their side because again, the Bible does seem to, and sometimes the Bible argues these positions, and I'm like, well, maybe there's a third way. Maybe you're both taking a hard line on these stances, but maybe there's actually a third way that kind of incorporates both of them. That, like you said, a true believer can't lose their salvation. Someone who maybe really didn't have that conversion can walk away from the faith because it's almost like, did they deceive themselves? Because the Bible does talk about deceiving yourself and being into the faith and stuff like that. Did they deceive themselves of being into faith? You know.
Well, yeah. There's the parable of the rocky soil.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not the seed's not taking root, and then it also talks about some that God appointed as objects of His wrath. That almost um, that that was their it almost seems to imply that God makes some people that you know um, this kind of goes against the Calvinist side that they
Right.
didn't. Do you know what I'm saying? Like maybe they
Yeah.
didn't. I won't say didn't have a choice, but um,
Maybe
I don't know.
again, like Judas. We look at Judas and we look at Pharaoh. Those are the two good examples from the Bible. Well, why did
Right,
Pharaoh
right.
harden his heart? Because God knew he was going to harden his heart no matter which way. So what did he do? He hardened his heart even more. And again with Judas, he knew Judas would betray Jesus. He still let Judas a taste of the glory to hopefully. And I got to wonder, God in His sovereignty is like, okay, I'm going to still give him that chance to come to faith. Does that make sense? But he still rejected it no matter what, because even though he saw who Jesus was, I think let his personal biases get in the way of what we would normally think. You know, yeah, it is
Yeah.
very interesting conversation and stuff like that you can have and stuff like that. It is one that I don't like to sit there and say one way is the other way because again I think and this is where I get down to I think we make too much of the denominational arguments on certain things. Um,
Hmm.
and I do get kind of frustrated when one person says, "Well, my faith is my denomination is right because and I'm like, no denomination is actually right because you actually look at it. There's a lot of them. Both sides, all of them have something that is unbiblical. So
Well, yeah, or at least something where it's they make it part of their creed or whatever. It's like I don't know. Always have even if it's I don't know. I just take issue with that when it's like, oh, this church believes this. And it's like I understand why you need to do that because you want to make sure for someone who's on the outside wanting to go to a church that aligns with what they believe. But it seems like a lot of churches, denominations, they get so wrapped up in like their version of um uh you know I don't know. Everyone can't be right, right? I mean,
yeah, because and that's the thing is, I think that's why I said, I like a lot of the pastors I listen to, but I don't always agree with them on everything because, again, I think that, and it might be just where I'm at in my walk, versus somebody else, because the Lord may have illuminated something different to them versus me. You know what I mean? So
mhm.
that's the way I see it. So, you know, um. Well, it's almost 6 o'clock my time, 5 your time. I don't want to tie you up, so I appreciate you coming here and chatting. I definitely would like to do some more, faith stuff. We need to just schedule a time where maybe we just have that as a whole episode or something.
Yeah, of
When
course.
when
Yeah.
when you're not tied up and busy, because I know as a family man, and you're doing a lot of work, so you know. We'll hopefully get something together here. If not, we'll talk some more on the
Yeah, of
next
course.
the next stream. So, all right.
No, man, I always appreciate you reaching out and having me on. I really do.
Well, thank you for coming on. Uh, I'm glad you're a great friend of the channel, a great brother in Christ. So, where can people follow you, sir?
I'm on X, Twitter at Joshua Howard, and on Instagram Josh_Howard.
Okay. All right, if you guys go ahead and follow Josh at his, and I'll go ahead and I'll put those links to his Twitter on there. And then, of course, the campaign link is in the chat. If you guys are interested, go ahead and check them out. And, if you guys have anything, you want to talk about next time for Josh when he's on, just let me know and stuff like that. And as always, guys, you guys could always follow me at Volt Chaos on everything. So, I appreciate you guys coming. Josh, again, thank you, brother. As always, it's good to talk to you. And, glad to see that the campaign is doing very good again. I know we've talked briefly about some other stuff, and hopefully, it's only upwards from here. So I'm glad that God is blessing you again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right, guys. Well, we're gonna go ahead and end, Josh. If you have anything else to do here, and we'll probably be back maybe a little bit later on tonight or tomorrow. I'm not sure yet, but I want to hold you up here. All right, brother.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Josh, for coming. I appreciate
All
it,
right.
and God bless,
Uh,
brother.
God bless.
All right, guys. And we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna finish out here, and we are going to raid out here. I'm gonna see here who we can raid out to. If you're on Twitch, guys, again, appreciate you guys watching. Josh is a great brother in Christ, and he's a great writer and a great creator. And so, if you guys, let's get his campaign back even more. You guys will be really impressed with Dead at 17. It's a fantastic series, so I think you guys will like it. So, meanwhile, I'm gonna go ahead here.